Hey Leute, ich bin Nathan und ich komme aus Kalifornien. Und ihr seht Deutsch für euch.
I'm back from the dead. So today we're gonna do something light and easy and fun. I'm going to show you how to imitate a German accent. Because why not? We're all curious about this kind of stuff. Accents are fun. Especially when you're currently living in Russia. Now, before I start, there's something you have to keep in mind, especially if you're German yourself and a bit sensitive on this topic, like me. What I'm going to be showing you here is a typical to even stereotypical German accent. I won't be going full Hollywood evil guy mode on you, but it's gonna be pretty thick. There are tons of Germans, especially those that speak English very well but just can't lose that last bit of accent, who do not lay it on that thickly, but just have something we call Färbung. That literally translates to coloring and means that, you have that last bit of your native language in whatever other language you're speaking. Apart from that not being quite as fun to imitate, it's also a lot harder to imitate because, first of all, it's a lot more individually varied, although parts of it are still very surprisingly predictable. But it also uses some sounds correctly, and then at other parts it doesn't use those same sounds correctly, but others are always wrong. So it's, it's a lot more, all over the place. So I'm not going to be doing that, although I might mention, some things that are more authentic at some points. Now, although I know better than to hope for this, I hope that this is enough of a disclaimer for the more sensitive German watchers. Please. Okay, so before we get to dissecting, let me give you a taste first. So this is what, I would call a typical German accent. I don't know if you think it sounds nice or not so nice, but this is pretty close to, how some people might speak when they are from Germany and are either not paying that much attention to how they sound or just can't pull it off better. So now I will get to, explaining how that works. Beautiful, or? Now, let's get you there. First off is the R. You really need to refine your Hochdeutsch R to pull this one off perfectly. If you need help with that, watch episode 53. If you're still having too much trouble with that, first of all, shame on you if you've been watching for a while, but secondly, you're kind of lucky because this is the sound that most Germans still manage to pull off somehow. Some do it perfectly right, but when it doesn't work out, there's a few ways how it doesn't work. First of all, some slip into the childlike w imitation, whereas the wabbit, I don't hear it that often, but it happens to Germans too, if they already know how to do the w sound but can't get to r. So, you are wrong. Very, very wrong. And in other cases, some people actually end up overdoing it, which is a special form of hypercorrection. Hypercorrection. An error that results from the knowledge about a common error and the consecutive attempt to prevent making that mistake at any cost, therefore overusing the assumed correct form. The second common error is the and th, so th turning into d, z, and f. This is the big one for most Germans. The transformation, so meaning which letter it gets replaced with, depends on whether or not we're talking about the voiced or the unvoiced variant of the. For example, the th in the and this is voiced. Therefore, this is either replaced by d or z by people who can't pronounce the th, because those are also voiced sounds that sound similar to us to the th. So the and this could then be pronounced either d and dis or z and this. Usually the form with d is more common, but both are, both happen. Now the unvoiced variant is the th in such words as theory or thyroid, so it's sharper. This sound is most likely to turn into an F sound. This might sound strange, but to a German ear, the F is actually the closer sound to the sharp or unvoiced th than an S or any other unvoiced sound. Now, therefore, the stereotypical Hollywood / Bond villain way of saying this is a theory of mine might be very fun, and because, you know, we're used to that thing, it kind of brings out a certain feeling in us, but it's actually not what a normal German will sound like when they speak English. Simply because most Germans are not that oblivious to English phonology. That does, of course, happen. I can't speak of 100% cases here, but it's a lot less likely, and when you use it, it sounds a lot more caricature-like. So the more real-life German accent version of this is a theory of mine would be this is a theory of mine. Next one, v versus w. This one is the most predominant case of hypercorrection in German to English speakers. We don't have w in German, which normally in a early German accent will lead to people pronouncing such words as whale or winning as veil and winning. But since every English teacher in Germany is aware of this, this is also something that we will be told to avoid pretty early on. And because of that knowledge, a lot of people get subconsciously confused and will desperately try to avoid this mistake at any cost, turning it into the opposite mistake. So using w too often, turning words like vase and verb into ways and verb. So you can use either one, because a lot of people will make both mistakes and then do it right sometimes. It's just, you know, your tongue gets confused sometimes. It happens to me too, actually, when there's a lot of w and v in one sentence. Then we have the issue of Auslautverhärtung, which is actually something that I dedicated a whole episode to, so you can go watch that if it interests you and you haven't seen it yet. That's episode 63. Auslautverhärtung means that in German, like in some other languages, for example Russian, the consonant at the end of a word is always going to be pronounced as if it were the unvoiced version. So for example, if I have a D at the end of a word, in German I'm going to pronounce that as if it was a T. That's normal in German. That doesn't exist in English though. So that results in many Germans, even at relatively high stages of speaking English, will turn final syllable consonants into the unvoiced variant. So one example would be word, which by a native German speaker could be pronounced word. The next one is turning the ending schen, like in situation, into schen. This is something that English already does, so of course you don't say situation. Well, in some accents you do, but normally you don't do that. So it's not that far off from the real thing, but because in German we tend to swallow endings generally more than in English, this sometimes is overdone. So while you as a normal English speaker might say situation, with a German accent you might want to say situation. Schen. So there's absolutely no sound in between there anymore. It's just schen. Situation, imagination, stuff like that. Then the next one is the bird sound, so which is the thing that happens when there's an I in front of an R, you know, that that very own sound. Again, this is another sound we don't have in German, but we have one that is very similar, which is Ö. So some Germans will end up turning the sound into Öa. So instead of bird, I might end up saying bird. I see a bird outside my window. I actually am seeing birds outside my window, so appropriate. Not that it matters to you, but hey, I gotta amuse myself sometimes. Then sometimes there's also the issue of having a lack of connections between words, which is something that is in English is not as prevalent as, for example, in French, where you have a lot of liaisons, but it is more prevalent than in German. So a German might speak more staccato-esque than you would normally do in English, because in German we usually separate words relatively clearly. Of course, we also mumble and stuff, but you know, from the core setting of the language, we have something that is called a glottal stop in between a lot of words, which means that you close your glottis very, very briefly in between words. Normally, if that's like the only thing that's left over from your German accent, it's not going to be very noticeable, because it mostly leads to you enunciating your words better. So I still have traces of that left in how I speak English, but I kind of like it, so I've never made an effort to remove it. Then we have the ending like in butter, mother, sister, turning into or ah. Now this is not a problem if the German in question speaks with a British accent, because in British English, you do this too. Butter, mother, sister. It's a bit funny if they normally speak American English and then suddenly start saying things like butter, mother, because it just doesn't fit the accent. So that's another thing you can watch out for, especially if you speak American English and want to do a German accent in that. Very few people will end up saying butter, because very few people have an Australian accent in Germany, but they will then have singular British words in American English. So there might be some Germans saying sports like trousers instead of pants, or cinema in American English. You know, it bleeds in there some every now and then. Then we have the L, which in German, as you know, L is very much in front. So L, while in English you have O. So a lot of Germans will either ignore that or not be able to hear it because it doesn't make any difference in the meaning of words and because the sounds are not that far apart. So for example, you might want to say quill, where German might then say quill, quill. Or I will do that, I will do that. Okay, then to wrap it up, I have some minor ones that are not that important, but will give you that cherry on top. First of all, we have the letter combination AU, which exists in both English and German. In German, we pronounce it as au, while in English, if it, appears, it normally is pronounced as a, as in authority. So Germans are usually aware of this one, but if they don't know the word, they might say stuff like authority, or authority, authority, whatever. Then another common one is forgetting about the silent P in words like psychology or psychiatrist. So Germans will end up saying psychology and psychiatrist. Then turning J into Ch. For example, the garage, or the DJ, or joining. I will be joining you. Enjoy this. This is especially prevalent in Southern Germans because there it's also common for that to be part of a dialect. So they will do the ch instead of j there too. So if we combine the last two ones from a Southern German, you're very likely to get the pronunciation psychology. Do you know psychology? And as a last note, I'm sure many of you who are watching this are already aware of this, but if you're going for pulling off an authentic German accent, don't sound like you're constantly sneering down at somebody. This is something that Hollywood made to be very closely associated with a stereotypical German accent, but it's just not inherent to our speech pattern. So it's not, some people might think by now that this is, just how German sounds, but it isn't. It's not our cadence. It's just part of the characters. However, if you're just going for an over-the-top parody, of course, knock yourself out. Or, just yell everything. That works too. Originally, I was going to tell you all about, what's been happening with me very quickly in German, but since this is very appropriate for this one, I think I'm just going to do it in, a German accent with the chainsaw in the background, just because I can't do anything about that right now. So, my leg is getting better, although I'm not really quite sure, how it's supposed to feel now, so I might go to the doctor again. But it's getting a lot better, and I've caught a cold, but it's, I'm containing it. So right now I think everything's going better. Besides that, apparently my Russian teacher here is a bit racist against Germans. So that's not very nice. But, I have to deal with it, I guess. And that's it. I'll give you a random word now, and that's it. Alright, your random word of the week is der Korb. Or in this case, das Körbchen. Because it's so small and cute. Das Körbchen. Anyway, bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!